I understand why you stopped, but we have to keep moving. Let us help you get somewhere warm.
The December wind wasn't just cold. It was a physical assault, a razor-sharp entity that seemed to hate everything living, especially Claire Bennett. She sat huddled inside the plexiglass bus shelter, a fragile figure in a thin olive-colored dress that was completely useless against the 12-degree freeze. It was the kind of bone-chilling weather that made the city of New York feel like a ghost town, the usual cacophony of traffic muffled by the thick, relentless snowfall. But the cold seeping into her marrow was nothing compared to the absolute numbness in her chest. Beside her, on the frost-covered metal bench, sat a battered brown duffel bag, her entire life reduced to 20 pounds of fabric and regret. The zipper was stuck halfway, revealing the corner of the divorce papers that Marcus had literally thrown at her face less than 3 hours ago. The scene played on a loop in her mind, a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. "You're defective, Claire," he had sneered, his voice devoid of the warmth she had once worshipped. "I need a legacy, not a broken vessel. Get out." Just like that. 3 years of marriage, of trying, of endless fertility appointments, adoption brochures, and tears, all incinerated because her biology didn't align with his ego. She had been ghosted by her own life. She had no parents to run to, her friends had been filtered out by Marcus's controlling nature, and her bank account was running on fumes. She was waiting for a bus that wasn't coming, fully aware that if she stayed here all night, the hypothermia would likely take her before sunrise. And in that moment, shivering violently, a terrifying thought crossed her mind. Maybe that would be easier. The crunch of boots on snow broke her trance. It wasn't a casual walk. It was the heavy, rhythmic thud of someone approaching with purpose. Claire's survival instinct flickered back to life. She tightened her grip on her bag, her knuckles turning white. In a city like this, solitude was dangerous, but company could be fatal. She kept her head down, hair falling like a curtain to hide her face, hopping to be invisible. But the footsteps stopped right in front of the shelter. She was forced to look up. Standing there was a towering figure in a navy peacoat, dark hair dusted with snowflakes, looking like he had just stepped out of a catalog, except his eyes were filled with a confusing mix of intensity and concern. He wasn't alone. Clustered around his legs like ducklings were 3 children, bundled up so tight they looked like colorful marshmallows. The man, who looked to be in his mid-30s, scanned her, taking in the inadequate dress, the shivering, the sheer desperation radiating off her. He didn't look at her like a predator. He looked at her like she was a tragedy he couldn't scroll past. "Excuse me." His voice was deep, cutting through the wind, but the tone was incredibly gentle. "You waiting for the 402?" Claire nodded, her teeth chattering so hard she could barely keep her jaw shut. "Yeah," she lied. The man sighed, a puff of white mist escaping his lips. "Ma'am, the app says the last bus left 20 minutes ago. Next one isn't until 6 a.m. "You're gonna freeze to death out here." Claire tried to project confidence, but it came out as a pathetic whimper. "I'm fine, I'm just figuring it out." The little girl in the red puffer jacket, who couldn't have been more than 6, tugged on the man's coat. Her eyes were wide, taking in Claire's blue-tinged lips. "Daddy, look at her, she's shaking like a leaf, we can't leave her." The boy next to her, slightly older, nodded vigorously. "Yeah, Dad, you said we gotta help people." The man looked from his kids back to Claire, a silent conversation happening in his head. He made a decision. He crouched down, putting himself at eye level with her, which somehow made him less terrifying and more human. "I'm Jonathan Reed. These are my munchkins, Alex, Emily, and Sam. Look, I know I'm a random guy on the street and this sounds sketchy as hell, but we live 2 blocks over, just around the corner. Please, let us give you a warm place to crash tonight, just for a few hours. Get some food, get warm. I'll call you an Uber to wherever you need to go in the morning." No strings attached. Claire instinctively shook her head, the fear of the unknown battling the very real pain of the cold. "I can't, I don't know you." Jonathan offered a sad, crooked smile. "You're sitting in a freezer wearing a cocktail dress. I've got 3 kids with me. If I was a bad guy, this would be the worst cover story in history. Please, my conscience is gonna kill me if I walk away." Claire looked at the kids. Children have a way of seeing the truth, and these 3 were looking at her with pure, unadulterated worry. They weren't scared of her, they were scared for her. That broke her. The wall she had built to survive the last 3 hours crumbled. "Okay," she whispered, the word barely audible over the wind. "Okay." Jonathan didn't hesitate. He stood up and immediately peeled off his heavy peacoat, draping it over her shoulders. The warmth was instant, smelling of expensive cologne and cedarwood, and it almost made her weep. He was left in just a sweater, but he didn't seem to care. Sam grabbed the lady's hand. "Alex, stay close, let's move." The walk to the house was a blur of snow and exhaustion. Clare felt like she was walking underwater, her legs heavy and unresponsive. When they finally reached the house, a beautiful two-story place with warm, golden light spilling from the windows, she almost collapsed with relief. It looked like a home. A real home, not the cold, sterile museum Marcus had kept. Inside, the contrast was jarring. The house was messy in a cozy way, toys scattered on the rug, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, the smell of vanilla and old books. "All right, team," Jonathan commanded, clapping his hands. "PJ time, stat, I'm making the ultimate hot chocolate." Emily, the little girl, looked at Clare. "Can we make the extra marshmallow kind for her? She looks sad." Jonathan ruffled her hair. "You bet, go." As the kids thundered upstairs, Jonathan guided Clare to the plush sofa. He disappeared for a moment and returned with a thick, soft sweater and wool socks. He held them out with a strange reverence. These were my wife," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "She passed away about 18 months ago. She was about your size. I think she'd want you to be warm." Clare took the clothes, her fingers brushing his. There was a shared grief there, a silent acknowledgement of loss that passed between them like an electric current. She went to the bathroom to change, and as she looked in the mirror, she saw a woman who had been shattered. But for the first time in hours, she also saw a woman who was safe. When she came back out, the living room had transformed. The kids were in pajamas, creating a fortress of pillows on the floor. Jonathan placed a steaming mug in front of her and a plate of grilled cheese sandwiches that looked like Michelin star cuisine to her starving eyes. They ate together, a strange, makeshift family. Clare watched them, the way Jonathan patiently explained a math problem to Alex, the way he wiped chocolate off Emily's face. It was everything she had begged Marcus for. It was everything she was told she was too broken to have. Tears started to stream down her face, silent and hot. "Are you okay?" Emily asked, abandoning her drawing to come stand by Clare's knee. "Did the bad weather hurt you?" Clare wiped her eyes, her heart aching. "No, sweetie, I'm just really happy to be warm." Jonathan caught her eye from across the room. He didn't say anything, but his expression shifted. He saw it. He saw the deep, gaping wound in her soul because he was carrying one of his own. The storm outside was raging, burying the city in white, but inside this house, the ice around Clare's heart was just starting to crack. She didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just a rescue mission. It was the beginning of a revolution. After the children had gone to sleep, a strange, peaceful silence settled over the house, the kind of silence that follows a storm. Snow was still falling outside, but inside, the soft glow of the fireplace had made the atmosphere cozy. Jonathan poured tea into 2 mugs and walked into the living room, where Clare was still looking at the old family photos arranged on the mantel. He noticed that Clare's hands were still trembling slightly, not from the cold, but from the internal storm that was consuming her from within. "You don't have to tell me the whole story if you're not comfortable," Jonathan said in a soft voice, placing the mug in front of her. "But sometimes, sharing the pain lightens the burden." Clare gripped the mug of tea, its warmth giving her a little courage. She looked into Jonathan's eyes and understood that this man wouldn't judge her. And then, the suffocating secret she had hidden for so long came pouring out. She told him how Marcus had treated her, how he made her feel that she had failed as a woman because she couldn't get pregnant. "He said I am broken," Clare's voice cracked, tears rolling down her cheeks. "That I am defective, and he deserves a woman who can give him a family. I can't give anyone the happiness they want." Jonathan's silence echoed in the room. Clare thought perhaps he was thinking the same thing as Marcus, that she was truly incomplete. But when Jonathan finally spoke, his voice held no pity. Instead, there was a suppressed rage, anger toward the man who had broken Clare. "Your ex-husband is the world's biggest idiot," Jonathan said firmly, fire in his eyes. "And I am saying this because I know that family isn't made by blood." He stood up and pointed toward the photos on the living room wall. "Manda and I tried for years, doctors, treatments, heartbreak. We went through it all. When we found out we couldn't become parents naturally, we were shattered. But then we decided to adopt." He placed his hand on a photo of Alex, Emily, and Sam. "These 3, they aren't biological, Clare, but I can swear that they are mine in every sense. The inability to conceive doesn't make you broken. Marcus limited your value to just your body, and that is his failure, not yours." Clare was stunned. The mountain of shame and grief in her chest began to melt away with Jonathan's words. For the first time, someone explained to her that becoming a mother isn't just a matter of the womb, but a matter of the heart. For the next 4 days, the snowstorm brought the entire city to a standstill. Roads were closed, schools were off, and Clare was confined to Jonathan's house. But this confinement wasn't a prison. It was a blessing in disguise. In these few days, Clare lived the life she had dreamed of. She would wake up and make pancakes, braid Emily's messy hair, help Alex solve difficult math problems, and spend hours drawing with Sam. The household system that had fallen apart after Amanda left, Clare had unknowingly pulled it back together. Jonathan, who usually remained exhausted juggling work from home and the children, noticed a new energy had entered the home. The children's laughter was returning. Emily, who was usually shy with new people, now sat in Clare's lap listening to stories. Alex, who didn't want to be a burden on his father, now looked relaxed. Jonathan was observing all of this in silence. He saw how Clare had filled the missing pieces of his home. The woman who had been cast out as useless was, in reality, a born nurturer. On the 4th day, when the snow stopped and the sun came out, a strange fear crept into Clare's heart. Reality had returned. She would have to leave now. She packed her bag, even though her heart wanted to stay right there. When she came down to the kitchen, Jonathan was already there, drinking coffee, lost in deep thought. I'll leave today, Clare said hesitantly. The roads are clear. Jonathan put down his coffee mug and looked straight into Clare's eyes. He wore a serious expression, as if he wasn't about to make a business deal but a life-altering decision. Sit down, Clare, I need to talk to you, he said. Clare felt scared. Had she done something wrong? She sat on the chair, clasping her hands in her lap. Jonathan took a deep breath. Over the last few days, I've watched how you are with my children. You've made this house a home again. After Amanda passed, I was surviving, not living. Managing the house, running a business, fulfilling the children's emotional needs, I felt like I was drowning. He leaned over the table, his gaze intense. I have a proposition for you. I know this is a bit unorthodox, maybe even sounds crazy, but I need help, serious help. I want you to stay here. As a live-in housekeeper and nanny, I'll pay you a proper salary, provide a place to live, food, everything. You don't need to go anywhere. Clare's eyes widened in shock. Jonathan, you don't even know me. I'm a stranger. Jonathan shook his head. You are not a stranger. My children like you, and children never lie. You need a safe place to start over, and I need someone who can manage my home. This isn't charity, Clare. This is a mutual need. Marcus kicked you out because he was blind, but I can see how valuable you are. Clare had no words. Where she was about to die on the street, now she was being offered a new life, a new family. But could she fulfill this? Could she leave her past trauma behind and become a mother figure to these children without breaking? The risk was great, but the fear of being alone in the outside world was greater. Okay, she whispered softly, with a newfound hope. I'll stay. Jonathan smiled, and it was a purely genuine smile. But they didn't know how complex and beautiful this decision would make their lives, nor did they realize that the past wasn't fully buried yet. Marcus was still out there somewhere, and his return could wreak havoc on their newfound world of happiness. 6 months had passed, and that snowy night now felt like a scene from an old movie. Clare's life had taken such a U-turn that if anyone had seen her before, they wouldn't recognize her now. The scared girl in the olive dress had vanished. In her place was a confident, glowing woman who was now earning a degree in early childhood education from the local college. The Reed household was no longer running like a machine, but beating like a heart. Jonathan, who used to be drowning in stress and grief, was now often found laughing in the kitchen. For the children, Clare wasn't just a nanny, she had become their anchor. Whether it was Emily's dance recital or Sam's art project, Clare was always in the front row, cheering the loudest. But within this perfect picture, a hidden tension was developing. The chemistry between Jonathan and Clare was no longer just employer-employee. Their gazes would meet and hold for seconds, and then both would awkwardly look away. Both of their hearts held volcanic feelings, but both were terrified of crossing the boundaries. Then, one evening, Jonathan came home looking frantic, his face pale. Bad meeting? Clare asked, closing her books. Jonathan loosened his tie and ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Complicated. The client wants me to shift to New York for 6 months to oversee a project. This deal could take my company to the next level. There is huge money involved. But I can't pull the kids out of school to take them there, and leaving them here is impossible. I think I'll have to refuse. Claire thought for a moment. It felt like life was testing her again. Would she end up alone again? No, this time she wasn't going to run. You don't have to refuse, Claire said in a calm voice. We'll all go. Jonathan looked at her in astonishment. What do you mean? Claire stood up, radiating pure ride-or-die energy. I'll come with you. The kids can do remote schooling for 1 semester. Besides, they'll get exposure in NYC. I'll manage the household there just like I do here. We will manage, Jonathan. We are a team. Jonathan just stared at her. This was the woman who had nothing 6 months ago, and today she was ready to uproot her entire life just to help him. There was silence in the room, but it wasn't awkward. It was charged. Jonathan walked slowly toward her and took her hand across the table. His hands were cold, but his grip was strong. Claire, I need to tell you something, and I can't stop it anymore, no matter how complicated the situation gets. Claire's heart began to pound violently. Was this what she thought it was? I have fallen in love with you, Jonathan said, looking straight into her eyes without any hesitation. Not because you manage the house or take care of the kids, but because you are brave. You broke and then you put yourself back together. Marcus convinced you that you were worthless because you couldn't be a biological mother, but Claire, look at me. I have 3 children and all 3 are adopted. I don't need an heir from you, I need you. As a partner, as my wife. I choose you with all your so-called weaknesses. Tears spilled from Claire's eyes and fell onto their joined hands. These were the words she had waited years to hear. Marcus's poisonous words claiming she was broken suddenly faded away. I love you too, Claire whispered. I was afraid this was all just in my head. Jonathan walked around the table and pulled her into his arms, and in that moment, the kitchen light became the most romantic light in the world. It was the union of 2 broken people who had completed each other. Marcus's rejection had pushed Claire to the very door where her true destiny, Jonathan and those 3 children, was waiting for her. The New York trip turned out to be a whirlwind adventure, exactly as Claire had predicted. Upon returning, Jonathan didn't wait. One evening, when everyone was back home, he officially proposed to Claire. The wedding was simple but filled with emotion. When the priest asked, "If anyone has any objections, speak now," silence fell, but then suddenly Sam stood up on his seat and yelled, "No way, we love Claire." The entire hall erupted in laughter and applause. Claire wiped her tears and looked at Jonathan, finally convinced that family isn't made by blood, but by love and choice. On their wedding night, when everything was quiet, Jonathan asked Claire, "Do you still think about what Marcus said?" Claire smiled and shook her head. "Marcus was wrong. I wasn't broken, I was just in the wrong place. He threw me away, but he didn't know he was pushing me toward the person who would truly value me." Years later, at Emily's high school graduation, Claire sat in the front row, holding Jonathan's hand. Emily was the valedictorian and was giving a speech on stage. "My mother," Emily said, gesturing toward Claire, "taught me that being biological isn't necessary, being a mom is. She held us together when we were broken. People say miracles don't happen, but she was our miracle." Claire saw Sam and Alex sitting on either side of her, both taller than her now, but their eyes held the same love she had seen that snowy night at the bus shelter. The story had the perfect ending. Marcus was left alone in his search for ego and a perfect legacy, while Claire, who was called barren and useless, was now the proud mother and wife of a full, happy family. She had proven that worth is not measured by body parts, but by the capacity of the heart. Snow still fell in the winters, but now Claire no longer felt the cold.